Hi and welcome, I'm AnewZ and you are watching Context. Following the very public feud between the US President Donald Trump and his former top advisor Elon Musk of SpaceX, Tesla and X social media, Trump said he has no interest in repairing the relationship. The spat began after Musk officially stepped down from his role, spearheading the White House's effort to slash the federal government and spending. Musk called out Trump's budget and tax bill as an abomination, saying it undermines everything he worked on as the chief of the so-called Department of Government Efficiency. He went on to say Trump is ungrateful, suggesting he wouldn't win the election without him. Trump fired back, saying Musk was crazy and implied he will cut his company's government contracts and subsidies. The social media feud went on for a while, with the two trading barbs. Musk has since deleted much of his posts, and as the unrest in Los Angeles broke out during protests against federal immigration raids, the head of the X social media showed support for the Trump administration. On the fallout of the Musk-Trump showdown and what could it bring to US politics and economy, we're talking with political scientist Daniela Mello, coming to us from Boston, and former diplomat Gustavo de Aristegui, joining from Rabat. Welcome, thank you so much for joining us. Now, in some of his latest remarks on Musk, Trump threatened him with serious consequences if he funded Democrats running against Republicans who vote in favor of his, quote, big, beautiful bill. Daniela, do you see such a 180 happening and Musk backing Democrats after this feud?
Hello, and thank you for the invitation to be here with you today to talk about this topic. It seems unlikely at this moment that Elon Musk would simply turn around and start supporting or heavily supporting Democratic candidates, though it's within the realm of possibilities, certainly. I believe more problematically here is to have the U.S. president tell a U.S. citizen who that U.S. citizen can support politically or not in a tone that sounds threatening. And that has been one of the points of contention about this particular episode or this particular interaction between the two of them. Musk, however, can, of course, utilize his money in a number of ways that can impact the Republican Party. First of all, the Republican Party is getting ready for midterms in which they expect to lose control at least of the Senate. So this is a very important issue for them, the coming election, the midterm elections in next year, later next year. So, Musk here could do a number of things. He could simply withdraw support. For instance, he had promised that he would be committing $100 million of his own money just to the midterm elections and to help Republican candidates. He could, of course, withdraw that. He's not legally bound to that promise. He could also support alternative candidates within the Republican Party. Alternative, let's say, he could go district by district, state by state, and identify candidates who are not MAGA candidates or who are MAGA candidates but who align themselves more with what Musk sees as his priorities, and he could fund those candidates within those races. So there's plenty of room for Musk to utilize the power of the purse, of his own personal purse, to try to affect politics without necessarily supporting the Democratic Party, though all options are on the table, of course.
Well, during the spat in a series of now deleted tweets, Musk alleged Trump's name is in the files on the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. He called for Trump to be impeached and replaced by J.D. Vance, and so on. Gustavo, do you see the president of the USA getting over such messages?
Well, the entourage of the president said very clearly that they thought it was a blow below the belt. That is how they described it to some friends of mine. And the question that one needs to ask oneself is, if Elon Musk knew about this before the election, why did he support Trump? Because you cannot just, go ex post facto saying, well, I knew that he was involved with a sex offender, but I decided to support him anyway. And the other thing is that as far as public opinion is concerned, this is pretty much a thing that is water under the bridge. I don't think that this is going to move anybody in favor or against Donald Trump. Right now, people have bigger fish to fry, and there is the appalling situation developing in Los Angeles and spreading towards the outskirts of Los Angeles, involving even the sheriff's department of the LA County. And going back to what Daniela was very brilliantly analyzing, I'd like to just signal out two things. He already said, Elon Musk already very clearly said that he was going to fund rebel Republicans, those that did not like the beautiful bill. And if you analyze the so-called beautiful bill, the beautiful bill is a complete aberration, as he said, fiscally speaking. It is exactly the same kind of fiscal policy that Liz Truss and her very short-lived Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kwasi Kwarteng, tried to set, which is lower taxes for the rich, for the non-rich, for everything, lower taxes altogether, and exponentially raise public spending. Of course, the public spending that the United States under Trump wants to do makes sense. It's security, it's defense, it's whatever. But if the combination of both is lethal for the dollar, it's lethal for confidence, it's lethal for the economy. I mean, going back to the Liz Truss example, it cost her her premiership, and Kwasi Kwarteng, who was the author of this theory, lasted 6 days as Chancellor of the Exchequer, and it cost the British pound, the pound sterling, 20% of its value in the foreign exchange. So in fact, if you analyze Elon Musk's personality, I mean, he apparently has Asperger syndrome, which makes people very concentrated and very square, if you want. And anything that goes outside of the boundary of logic or structure is something that is profoundly insulting or even hurtful for a person like Elon Musk. So he couldn't stop himself from saying that the law was a financial aberration. I don't think that the two men are going to become friends or make up again, but obviously the riots in Los Angeles have probably thrown water into the fire and not lighten it up. I think that this is going to maybe calm things down for a while, but the feud is there, and there's another threat that Elon Musk made, and one must not forget it, is that he said he wanted to create a new party. I don't think that this is viable in the American system. But he said that he wanted to make the 80% of the centrist mainstream vote go to this new party. In the United States, the two-party system has been contaminated by the extremes. But this proves that even the extremes haven't been able to create parties. They had to go into the existing ones.
Daniela, as Gustavo rightly mentioned, basically all topics in the U.S. have been overshadowed by the unrests in Los Angeles. What do you make of Musk supporting the administration's efforts in the last 4 days when it comes to quelling of the rallies and the protests? We've seen Trump sending out, now it's 4,000 troops of the National Guard and 700 Marines. What do you make of Musk's attempt to thaw the relation?
We can read this in a number of ways. One possible way is that Musk is obviously at odds with the president when it comes to economic policy, when it comes to tariff policy, when it comes to the big, beautiful bill, which will increase the budget tremendously and completely undo any gains that he perceives as having worked very hard towards with his Doge project. This does not mean, however, that Musk is not aligned with President Trump on issues of law and order, and that he disagrees with the president when it comes to quelling protesters on the streets. Another possibility here is that, we need to think about the various factions within the party. Is that Musk represents a faction that is not exactly the most nationalist one. It is not the faction, for instance, of a Steve Bannon, former advisor to the president, but still a big voice in the MAGA movement, who is completely anti-immigration and who has a very nationalist view of what it means to be an American. I would say a very white Anglo-Saxon view as well of what it means to be an American. What Musk is, sometimes we refer to this group in the United States as, the Silicon Valley conservatives. So what does Musk want? Musk actually wants less regulation of the industries of Silicon Valley. He wants less interference from the government. He certainly wants to bring the brightest from around the world to work in companies like his. That does not mean, however, that he is opposed to the detention of undocumented migrants by ICE and the immediate deportation. On the other hand, of course, Musk could be reacting like this as a way to also temper the flames, temper the mood of this clash with Donald Trump, because even though we do have a clash here between the leader of the United States and the wealthiest man in the world, it's very clear where the power asymmetry pends towards. What I mean by that is that Musk is the one who would lose the most from this confrontation with Trump, and I think he started to learn it very quickly as Trump decided to start deploying some of the threats that he did over the past few days. I mean, the Trump administration could reopen all sorts of investigations of Musk and Musk's industries. It could freeze billions of dollars in funding for a lot of his companies. It could make life very hard, even harder than it is at the moment for Tesla. So even though there's a lot of economic power that Musk can wield, it's very clear that he is no match for the President of the United States at the moment.
Well, as those threats were flying off on both sides, Musk also threatened to pull his Dragon spacecraft, the capsule NASA uses to deliver astronauts to the International Space Station. Reportedly, NASA and Pentagon are currently pushing for Musk's competitors to find and develop alternative rockets and capsules. Gustavo, do you see this actually escalating to the point where SpaceX is no longer used and that America has to wait for someone else to develop another way?
Well, there's two things that need to be taken into account. The first one is that he immediately rectified. He noticed that this was going too far, that he got carried away, that he was hot-headed, and it was a completely inconvenient and out of line. And on the other side, I mean, it's going to take the other space companies that are merely tourist attractions right now. I mean, you just go to the stratosphere and back is not really a space company. I mean, talking about Virgin or talking about Jack Bezos, it's going to take a long time, and at least 10 to 20 years for anybody to develop reusable rockets that can make it to the International Space Station, for example. Right now, Elon Musk is saying that he is going to carry out the ambition of exploring Mars next year and starting this year. So yes, there are a zillion different ways that the administration can seriously hurt Mr. Musk, and one is, of course, that the IRS could go into analyzing his outrageously large bonus of $53 billion that was frozen by some courts and then was finally authorized by other courts in Delaware. And it was seriously questioned by some other shareholders in Tesla, and that is a reason why, by the way, that Elon Musk has kept his other companies private. And he's even thinking, and I know it from a good source, that he is trying to take Tesla private again. It's going to take a long time, because it would take a huge effort in buying back the free float part of shares that are in the market. And lastly, I believe that the economic side of all of this, I mean, be it SpaceX or be it Starlink, Starlink right now is becoming an essential tool in very remote places in the world. And even if it's relatively expensive, if you annualize it, or if you pay by months, the subscription to the basic subscription of Starlink, for example, in places of Africa where Wi-Fi doesn't reach, or in desert countries, or in remote areas of the world. And actually, it gives a lot of people the autonomy, the independence, and above all, the confidentiality that the present communication systems don't have. So I really think that there is, of course, as Daniela said, dozens and dozens and dozens of ways that the American administration can make the life of Elon Musk and his companies very, very, very hard and miserable. But I do think that he is a very resourceful man. And he does have some people, not all of those people that he has on his teams, he listens to blindly and trusts implicitly. But I mean, they're telling him already that you really have to calm down, cool down, because otherwise this feud is going to be very bad for everyone, especially for him. In any case, I don't think it's a good thing for anybody that there's a third party appearing in the United States. I don't think that it is a good idea that he funds with any kind of super PAC or PAC that he creates. And again, that is something that he has already announced and withdrew, of course, some days later. The rebel candidates or anti-MAGA candidates. And let's not forget that, not everything in the MAGA side is very, very stable and rosy. Let's not forget, for example, that Steve Witkoff, probably Trump's best friend, who has become his special envoy for everything, not just the Middle East, was very, very meanly, harshly criticized by the neocon side of the MAGA movement. And that was responded with a speed of lightning by Don Jr., who bashed them seriously and actually warning them not to go down that road, saying, you guys are here to support the movement, not to manage the movement. We're here to be the leaders of the movement. You guys are MAGA neocons, but in fact you're anti-MAGA. Stay in your place.
Yeah, but when it comes to the geopolitical field, Washington is tied up with Beijing in all sorts of races, one of them being the electric vehicle field. Now, Tesla is US's front runner. Daniela, Trump did threaten to cut subsidies, but do you think that the White House would damage America's standing on the global field with a decision like that?
Well, to be seen. I mean, there are certainly economists saying right now that a lot of the measures that the president has taken in terms of his commercial tariffs and this battle this commercial battle between the United States and Europe and between the United States and China, for instance, will in fact damage the United States economy in a number of ways. I am not an economist, so I cannot speak to exactly which one of these arguments, whether it will help or it will hurt, is more viable. But here's what I can say. I mean, this feud between Musk and Trump could have a number of other repercussions that we haven't yet mentioned. One of them is the state of the space race against China. China has invested quite a lot in having a presence in space that matches or eventually surpasses that of the United States. It has made great progress over the past few years. And in the United States, the companies run by Musk have played an important role, a very important role, in helping the United States sort of stay ahead of that race. There's also a dimension here that has to do with national security, not just an economic dimension. It's true that if the United States goes into a recession, as as Elon Musk has predicted in his war of tweets with Donald Trump, the entire world economy, of course, will be affected by this. But we haven't spoken very much about the national security issues that are involved with these companies. Let's remember that someone like Elon Musk has a security clearance that has allowed him access to very important information of the Department of Defense. His companies participate in the deployment of satellites that are very important in the gathering of intelligence for the United States. So we are talking here about a tenuous position, I would say, for the US government. Also, I mean, doesn't come without risks for Musk, but the US government, by allowing itself to become so heavily dependent on one single company like SpaceX to deploy these types of satellites, has put itself at risk and has put itself in a vulnerable position geopolitically. It has, in fact, I mean, it is dangerous for an individual who was an unelected individual to hold this much economic power, have this many conflicts of interest, and at the same time play such an important role in the defense of the United States, in the defense industry, and have access to so many state secrets. So I think that's one of the elements of this split that hasn't gotten as much attention as the other ones, but that definitely merits our consideration as Elon Musk also ponders his relationship with China and his dependency on China for the batteries, for instance, for his electric vehicles. So Elon Musk's interests, geopolitically speaking, do not necessarily match the interests of the United States government at the moment.
Gustavo, I would like to hear your thoughts on this. We've heard Daniela speaking about who holds the power here, who actually holds the power. But when we look back at the first days and months of Trump's second term, Musk's ambitions, statements, foreign and domestic engagements, that had driven speculations that he is in fact running the country. Trump himself addressed and denied that on a number of occasions. All things considered, who would you say wields more power?
Well, I wouldn't even doubt it. The most powerful man on the face of the earth is the President of the United States, no matter how wealthy Mr. Musk may be. There are a couple of questions here that one needs to analyze. First are the economic consequences of the tariff war that has been waged by the Trump administration. Let's analyze where it comes from. I mean, we're talking about Pete Navarro, who, in my opinion, I mean, and I'm certain I'm not mistaken, is a very mediocre economist. I mean, when actually the things that he says are scientifically wrong. You cannot do what he says is going to happen and not provoke inflation. He said that tariffs will not provoke inflation. That is exactly the first thing that they do. And I actually wrote an article in which I compared Herbert Hoover with President Trump in that aspect, because when the United States went into a recession, Herbert Hoover started a tariff war and transformed that recession into a depression, and that is historic fact and economic analysis. So this is something that can happen, and let's not forget that the first feud that happened between the president and Elon Musk was when Elon Musk called Pete Navarro dumber than a sack of bricks. And that's when the whole thing started. Because the tariff war, of course, affected very seriously the economic interests of Tesla and other companies because the supply chain is severely affected. I mean, this is ignoring exactly how the world economy works. You know, automobile components travel over different borders dozens of times until they are finally installed in the final product. So if every time these components that are added to other components cross a border, you add tariffs to that, then cars would be completely impossible to sell. Second thing, depending on the conflict of interest, I will signal one that is very obvious. Elon Musk tried to impose a friend or a person of his circle of trust as NASA administrator. Well, this is a huge conflict of interest because the largest outsourced company or service provider of NASA is actually SpaceX. If you have somebody that is close to SpaceX as head of NASA, I mean, the conflict of interest doesn't get clearer than this. And last but not least, as far as national security is concerned, I largely agree with what Daniela said, but the mini satellites that Starlink uses are one of the sources of satellite intelligence gathering for the United States spy agencies. In fact, the Starlink system is used by Western countries or even by Ukraine, for example.
Ukraine. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have right now. Thank you both so much for joining us and providing us with your insights and opinions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. That's all we had for you in this edition of Context. Do stay tuned to AnewZ.